Yeah, thank you all for the honor and the joy to be with you. Now it's the middle of the conference, the third day, a little bit cloudy, and just 1 week after what we call Good Friday. So directly after Easter, sun will come back soon, but it's maybe a good cosmic earthly moment to concentrate on this theme, the spiritual background, the cosmic background of imitation. But starting, I want to remember that when Dr. Steiner started here, the School for Spiritual Science, that means when he did the foundation stone laying in 1913 already, before the First World War, his address was mainly to the unborn souls. In this address, it was clear that Steiner designed here a school for changing the life conditions on earth. And he said more or less, if we don't succeed, then those children coming, they can't find their homeland on earth in this epoch of pure materialism and technological achievements. So from the beginning, the challenge of childhood was inscribed in this hill. And when Dr. Steiner went to Stuttgart 6 years later to open the Waldorf School, some weeks before, he informed the anthroposophists here about this project. And he said in this talk, you know, since 7 years, that means since 1912, I see that the faces of the newborns changed. What we see now in the eyes of the newborns is fear, is a kind of hesitation. They are afraid to come. And he said more or less, we need a school and also a kindergarten to create a place where they can gain more security, strength. So in a way, this was an impulse just from the beginning of the Goetheanum, and insofar it is just wonderful that now Easter time and you are all here from all these continents who do this work. And now we want to focus on this cosmic earthly path, or on these spiritual backgrounds of what we call and experience as imitation. I start with a quote of Rudolf Steiner, and he said in that lecture, you know, imitation in essence, nothing other than a continuation of what existed in a completely different form in the spiritual world before birth or even before conception, where the immersion of one being into another takes place. This then expresses itself in the child's imitation of its human surroundings as an echo of spiritual experience. And you can still see the life between death and the new birth flowing in and shining forth when one observes the child's life here with true insight. What wonderful words to say that we see this cosmic life flowing in and shining forth if we really are close to the children. And there are, as most of you know, many descriptions of Dr. Steiner about this path of the human soul after death and before birth. And in one of these lectures, he said there are more or less 3 stages. And the first one is predominated by imagination. So the soul lives in a spiritual world, in a world of images. And this is, of course, the beginning. If we really go out of our human bodies, we have there this wonderful time, or this also very impressive time, where we all see in images. We see mainly our biography done, fulfilled. It's standing in front of us. But later on, there is a second epoch in the spiritual world where the soul is living in inspirations, is listening to voices, but not mainly of human beings, but voices of the hierarchies, living in a time of inspiration. And the third stage is living in intuitions. This is the third one. And then there is a way back, because human soul experiences the need to go on with destiny path on earth. And so back from the intuitive stage of being totally in the other ones, by inspiration and imagination back. This intuitive stage is very striking. Dr. Steiner said, human beings perceive the spiritual cosmos as the forces of their own being. Their entire existence consists in experiencing themselves within the cosmos. But they do not experience only themselves, for this cosmic existence does not separate them, as their physical organism later does, from the other life of the cosmos. They stand in a kind of intuition towards this cosmic life. The life of other spiritual beings is at the same time their own life. So a strong kind of identification with the surrounding, that means with the spiritual beings. But this is not at all a perception of, how to say, a fixed world, because the cosmic world, Dr. Steiner said, is always a world in becoming. So the human soul in the cosmos lives in motion, in a world of becoming, in a world of mobility, but filled with spiritual beings. Now we came out of eurythmy. It maybe sometimes reminds us to an earlier stage of our existence, in the middle of movement, spiritual beings in front of us, but it's not really in front of us. This is with us and even in us. In the lecture, Dr. Steiner said, in the spiritual world, before we set out to be born here on earth, we are actually in a state of constant movement. And movement is our true element there. So it's not only perceiving the movement of the other ones, of the spiritual beings, of the hierarchies, but it's also in ourselves. We are in motion, in a constant movement. In this spiritual pervaded, or as Dr. Steiner put it, God-pervaded experience. Life in the cosmos means life in a spiritual substance. And it could be for eternity, but the human soul experiences in the depth of her own inner existence the need to come back. And this is really a turning point. Until this turning point, this is all about going out, expansion, getting bigger. and then, or living in the cosmos, living in the surrounding, and then there is this turning point. And Dr. Steiner described it in some of his lectures, where it is really an inner experience. I need to come back on earth. And in the innermost spiritual soul, there is a kind of a seeking for the earthly existence and a beginning separation from the cosmic life. And it is not true that the newborns are directly coming out of a cosmic life. They are prepared since many decades or even centuries. And since long time, they lost the ability to be completely in the intuitive stage of outer experience. Dr. Steiner said there are stages of coming back to earth, and that means separating from the cosmos. What was once, in another lecture he said, what was once a complete co-experience with the spiritual beings of the cosmos now presents itself as a revelation of these beings. One might say that previously the human being had an experienced intuition of the spiritual world. Now this transforms into an experienced inspiration in which the being acts upon the human being from without, revealing themselves. So a kind of revelation, and again a kind of inspiration, a revealed reflection. So this going back to earth means necessarily to separate more and more, but never completely, from this cosmic life. And then especially if the human soul is coming in the lunar sphere, in the sphere of the moon, Dr. Steiner said there is starting an awakening self-experience. Until then, the human soul is merely experiencing the outer world inside. But now, coming closer and closer to the earth, there is an awakening self-experience. A self-experience in the sense of an self-consciousness on a feeling level. And there also the inspiration is changing to another kind of imagination. So from intuition to inspiration, and then from the lunar sphere on, it is this life in images. But never again the images of the last fulfilled biography. Dr. Steiner said there is a preview of what is coming in this biography, which will begin soon. In the moon sphere, a kind of a preview, a moment of vision. And every single child who is now in your kindergarten, Dr. Steiner said, had this moment, this vision of the biography coming. This can be a very difficult experience, because there are coming maybe traumas, loss, abuse, misery, death. And in a way, Dr. Steiner said, we are all prepared to a certain extent by our cosmic path. And only because we are prepared, we can finally say yes. Sometimes it's the end of a long process to accept your own biography, and especially if this biography is a hurted one, a violated one, a traumatized one. But it's a deep experience that most of the human souls, at a certain point, at least accompanied or in therapy, can start to say, yes, it's my life, even if it's my life. And Steiner said this would never happen if not, in the depth of their human souls, they had a pre-knowledge. And this kind of, and this is on the way to Earth. One does not see, Dr. Steiner said in the lecture, all the details of the biography, but in broad outlines, all the relationships of the coming life lies before one. This moment is of immense significance. In the course for curative education, he said, some of these children we see in our places for those who need special care, they had a shock in this moment of this forthcoming life, and this came to a certain dissociation of the different layers of the human existence. So it's hard for them to incarnate completely. So a very important time, but then closer to Earth. It is all coming from the periphery, and Steiner said still in the time in mother's womb, the individuality is not primarily living in the germ, in the embryo, but in the surrounding, in the placenta. This famous organ, holy organ, the placenta, which is never going completely to Earth. So there is no mineralization of the placenta, and there is also no separation in sexes in the placenta. In a way, the placenta keeps distance to the earthly forces. So the individuality is coming, but protected long time. In the third week, Dr. Steiner said, the individuality is beginning to immerse into the little body. In the third week, that means 21st day after conception, that means the heart is starting to beat. So the beginning of the heart organism is also a point where the individuality is coming closer to the human body. And then this enormous transformation, being born, being in a completely different world, Dr. Steiner said, in a completely different world. And what we can see in the eyes of the newborns is still an element of the divine world, of the hidden world, more than human beings. And as you know better than me, those children, they remain, they keep a connection to their spiritual homeland. But they have to come here. And the most dominant organ, the most important organ of the human organization for this incarnating process is the head. And most of you know that Dr. Steiner gave many lectures about the head and saying he's calm. We have a moved body, but we carry this calm organism. We come from a time of movement and motion, but now it has to come down. And the head is the organization who carries the individuality from the spiritual into the earthly world. In a lecture, Dr. Steiner said, what emanates from the head is what acts as the child's power of individuality. And it's interesting, this moment of being calm after this long time. So the head, which is so big at the beginning, it's even bigger in the embryologic time, but at least if we are born, it's a fourth of the whole length. Later, if we are adults, it's 1/8. So, but at the beginning, as you know, it is very prominent. And Steiner said it's not only prominent, it's the center for development. All the forces, in a lecture he said, of the child's organization, however strange and paradoxical that may sound to people today, all these forces of the child's organization emanate precisely in the child from the nervous sensory system. Central nervous sensory system. The child's power of individuality and the sensory organization. And this head, Dr. Steiner said, is a kind of a spiritual sculptor. In a lecture, the child is inwardly the most incredible, significant sculptor in shaping of its own organism. No sculptor is capable of creating worldly forms so wonderfully out of the cosmos as the child does when, in the period between birth and the change of teeth, shapes the brain and then the rest of the organism in a plastic way. The child is a wonderful sculptor. It is just that this plastic power works within the organs as an inner force of growth and formation. So the organizing forces from this head organization are going in the entire body. It all emanates from the head, Dr. Steiner said, from the head, that which enables the human being to plastically shape the organs. But the head is only able to do it because it's the center of the sensory system. That means these plastic powers have to do with the sensory quality of the human soul, now incarnated. So through the senses, Dr. Steiner said, through the senses, through this central nervous activity, the shaping process is going on. That means sensory maturity is the first one. Later on in the second decade, breathing maturity. In the third one, earthly maturity. The child is a feeling eye, Dr. Steiner once said. It is totally exposed, as you know, in the sensory world. It is in its whole existence a sensory organ with complete sympathy to the surrounding, if it's not completely broken or traumatized, with a deep inner trust, a belief in this surrounding, with a surrender of its own will. There is no distance to the outer world. One time he said, Dr. Steiner, the child is fully integrated in the stream of life, in total connection, or maybe we can say in communion. It is in its existence at the beginning of life a sensory organ, and most of you will know that Dr. Steiner quite often said it is a kind of a physical, religious, sensory, pious world attitude. There is a devotion of the child to the spiritual essence of the world. It lives in a kind of physical religion. It has nothing to do with confession, but it's a kind of a religious world connection. And this is not only in the eyes or in the ears. And Dr. Steiner said the sensory fields, they are not so demarcated. It is not only this little eye, more or less the whole child is a feeling eye, a kind of groping eye. And it shapes itself according to what it sees. That means not only taking inside all these impressions, all these spiritual impressions, because it's a lot about spirit. It's not only physical impression, because in the light, for the child, there is spirit in light, spirit in matter. It's a sensory organization full of angels, we can say from another point of view. So the spiritual hierarchies are with these qualities. Later on, we only see the light or only touch the water. But for the child, they are embedded in a spiritual atmosphere. And it is shaping his own body out of these experiences. The sensory organ system is the one who gives or enables this plastic sculpture activity. Also the central nervous system itself, Dr. Steiner said, it's like wax in German. So there is not a formed brain completely finished. No, it's shaped and shaped and shaped by what the children experience. But they are only capable to be so outside because it's still this coming from the cosmic world. So for years, there is a kind of a resonance of this intuitive element of being with the others. They carry this, an element of this, a rest of this, a remnant of this, but it's quite strong in this earthly world. And this creates the ability to learn, this wonderful ability to grasp really, but also it is the basement for their vulnerability, because they are so exposed, as you know, to what they experience. But the main experience, Dr. Steiner said, we can also say the center of all central nervous activity is the physical perception of the other human being. Of the other human being. It's not all about sensory experiences. They have a kind of a center or a target. And I think this has to do with the destiny. They come back on earth for human beings, for relationships, for meeting others. Of course, the light and the warmth and the water and the elements, but these are all elements for human beings carrying destiny on earth. So after all, they are mainly focused on human beings in their surrounding, spiritual beings, as in the cosmos, now on earth. And again, this kind of perceiving their activity, the motion. So not just human beings, but what do they do? As you know best in the kindergarten, how they behave. Dr. Steiner said the gestures of the human beings. This whole devotion of the child to the movement outside, this orientation to the moved human beings, but not only movements in the sense of agitation, movement as an expression of the inner core of the other one. We can also say of the morality of the other one. The principle of imitation, Dr. Steiner said, manifests itself in the gesture, in the sign. For every sign is present first and foremost in human development. What an image, that they come with these forces, and partly they have to let them behind, but not completely. It's a gift from the spiritual, godly cosmos on earth. And especially in the kindergarten time, you are surrounded and you work with these gifts they bring with them. And it's maybe a sign of hope that in the 20th century it was partly detected. Child psychology came in itself, without anthroposophy, to the conclusion by the studies of Daniel Stern and René Spitz and Anna Freud and John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth and many others, how important human relationship is. Sensory experience by human relationships, attachment, bonding. You know, the big themes of psychotherapy and child psychotherapy in the 20th century, they were completely new. In the 19th century, almost nothing. Of course, there was Pestalozzi and other pioneers, but in the theoretical thinking, it was not there. And then the theme came, interestingly, by deficiency. I mean, they studied hospitalism. They studied children in hospitals or in children's homes. They saw deprivation. But out of this, they realized the importance of the other one and the sensual element of it. So in a new textbook, you can read sentences which were not at all on the horizon of the 19th century. I read the sentence, the newborn perceives the mother not as an opposite, but mimically, by physically replicating her form within itself. From the very beginning, it experienced her body as akin to its own. So this discovery of the life in between I and you, of the mystery of incarnation, the mystery of imitation, and also what Daniel Stern called the implicit relational knowledge, das implizite Beziehungswissen, they bring it with them, and they have this confidence. So science, normal science, not achieved the cosmic level now, but they started in the 20th century a rediscovery of the spiritual dimension. I come to the end. This is, Dr. Steiner said, where the main focus must lie in the future. We must, so to speak, learn to listen in the revelation of the spiritual soul aspect as it was before birth or before conception. We must learn to see the growing child in its continuation of his time in the spiritual world. And this will be the precondition for a new culture, a selfless culture, not an egocentric one, this perception of the other one and its coming. And what we learn in early childhood from our life in imitation, Dr. Steiner said, what we learn from this cosmic gift, which we then transform into imitation and the beginning of our life with the other one, what we learn out of this for our whole biography is the universal sense of gratitude. The universal sense of gratitude is a kind of a late result of fulfilled imitation, or better to say, this experience we get in this in this sphere of imitation. And the second one, Dr. Steiner said, is that we can develop respect for human beings. So this universal gratitude toward the whole world and the respect for human beings are the fruit of not only imitation, but that you in the kindergarten open a space and a time, as we heard in the beginning. Here we have time. You open the space and the time that these processes can really happen. What affects one person from another is actually much deeper than one usually suspects, Dr. Steiner said. This is the last quotation, and now I give the words to my next speaker. Thank you very much.